Hello and welcome back to Dollars and Dragons. Today I have Shay Snow with me. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, like I said, my name is Shay Snow. I am a tabletop designer. I work for Paizo specifically. I'm a Native American person. I'm cat on Swampy Creek, currently living in Washington.
Cool. You've been freelancing since 2020. How did that start?
So originally I was in a very low popularity actual play podcast for Age of Ashes within Pathfinder. I do mean low popularity. We probably had like 10 listeners.
You didn't have to say that. You didn't, like, I wasn't gonna out you.
I'm a very forthcoming person.
I would have hyped you up or something. I would have been like, yeah, it was a critical success.
No.
With the critics.
No, but I was having fun with my friends. And basically we all decided we were going to join Twitter so that we could hype up the podcast and stuff. And one thing is that there are a whole bunch of people role-playing on Twitter as the different Pathfinder gods. So I started following them. And then I realized that there were actual freelancers following them. And then I followed staffers. And then one of the staffers, I believe it was specifically Logan Bonner, put out an open call for an upcoming book for Pathfinder 2e. And I got very excited. And it was a diversity open call. So basically they wanted people who weren't just standard cis white people. And I reached out and I was like, hey, I'm a Native American agender person. I would love to write with y'all. And he was like, yeah, here, contact Liz Liddell, who Liz Liddell is now a head editor over at Magic the Gathering. But, you know, I was like, cool, I'll message them. Liz gave me my first assignment, which was Bestiary 3, where I wrote the Walloped and the Azobu. But before they did that, they asked me, hey, can you send over example of your writing? And I said, yes. And I sent them 15 pages of homebrew content, which you should not do.
Yeah. What happened to that homebrew content? Is it published somewhere now, or they just...
They flipped through it, they skimmed it, and they were like, okay, this looks good, I'll give you the assignment. I don't know where that work is right now. I think it's on my old computer, but it was an entire adventure that I wrote.
Oh, cool.
With stats and everything. It was called Escape from Rahadum, and it took place in the nation of Rahadum within Pathfinder, which is an atheist nation. Atheist in not the we don't believe in the gods, but atheist in we actively reject the gods nation. Okay. And the whole point of it was that you were a worshiper of a god and you needed to get the hell out of there.
Interesting. Fleeing state lines. Okay.
Essentially.
Wow. Very well. Cool. And then you started working on freelancing and stuff like that. A lot of people, when they first get started with freelancing, they wonder what the process is like. Did you want to talk briefly through that as far as like when you get your assignment, how that works when you're working with some sort of lead developer, lead designer, and you're in communication with them? What's the process normally?
Yeah. So when we do Paizo hardcovers, we usually have a space where like the group can kind of interact with each other. That way everybody can kind of bounce ideas off of things. We have the lead designer in there. We also have some of the other designers as well as the lead editor in there. And that way we can kind of talk about ideas for things that are upcoming. Typically you get your assignment and they'll send you out a very nice formal email. They'll send you out a document to sign that says, I agree to give you X number of words in exchange for X number of dollars. Could be depending on how many and how much. You send it back to them. You get into the little area where, you know, you can talk with everybody and exchange information. We have a milestone, which is kind of in the middle where we send about half of our word count in, and the developers at that point will go, this looks good. This is what you should fix. This is how you should move forward with things. Then, you know, you get that back, you take their advice or you don't. It depends on if you're really interested in continuing to freelance or not. And then from there, you will work towards your turnover, which is when you turn everything in. It's a final date. It can be pretty flexible if you need a little bit extra time, but generally that's your final date. And then about a month later, you get paid. And then about a year later, you see your work.
That sounds like a very tightly scheduled process.
It is.
For deadlines and things like that, I'm curious, and I don't know if this is proprietary. I don't know why they would hide this, but maybe it's somewhere in your NDA when you do sign up as a freelancer. How many rounds of edits do they normally do?
Well, I mean, I can just tell you that from working as an editor, we will typically do about 3 or 4 rounds of edits. We don't tend to send those back to the freelancer for work. We do that editing all in-house.
So you'll take first drafts and say this is good or this is not good.
They'll take first drafts that goes to the development team, and then they'll develop it from there. They'll fix the stats, they'll fix the numbers, they'll verify the lore and everything. Once it hits the edit, it's already been through a person already. So
yeah, that's not what I expected. Is that normal?
it's normal for Paizo. I don't know if it's normal for other people. When I did work on Coyote and Crow, I didn't really have a milestone. Connor Alexander was just sort of like, write this thing for me. And then occasionally he was like, hey, Shay, how's that going? But that may have also just been because he knew that I was already experienced at that point. Essentially, at that point, I, turned everything into Connor. And I was like, okay, how do you think? And he went, okay, great. Make all these edits. So he sent it back to me. We had a red line stage, and then I sent it back to him. We probably did edits on Shadows Over the Moon 2, 3, maybe 4 times of us just going back and forth. But there was also partially trying to figure out like how adventures were set up and things like that. When I contributed to Stories of the Freelands, I think we only had like 2 edits. So
project dependent, I suppose, and how closely you're working within the spec, and sometimes you're writing and you don't realize there's something like slightly adjacent to it that you may need to account for. So yeah, I've only been able to really interview and like get more information from the freelancing aspect of like people who work with wizards. So this is really fascinating for me. So I'm going to ask a bunch of other questions if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm curious, so you said that there's a space for freelancers to interact, and I know how I do that, but I'd like to know a little bit more about how Paizo does that, if that's an okay question.
We have private servers where people interact with each other. We put those together. About as much information as I can give out, but we have basically a private server area where all of the authors can interact with each other. We also have, and this is sort of adjacent, we have a freelancers Discord server where Paizo freelancers just sort of hang out and they talk with each other about different Paizo freelancer things and opportunities and such. Staff know where to. I say staff like I'm not part of staff now. It's a habit I get into when I talk about the server. But it's where like staff members can get a hold of authors. There's a Rolodex so that we can see like who's available and who's interested in writing what, things like that. But as for like project things, it's a very privately put together little server where people can bounce ideas off of each other. The unfortunate thing is when you're writing society scenarios like I assign and like I've written, you don't have that space. You're just kind of there on your own with your Word document going,
and sending a lot of emails. For me in doing the collaboration process, I think it sounds like the industry is a little bit moving towards that, based on my conversation with Brian Cortijo, who just was a contributor for Dragonlance, the new adventure by Wizards. And the way that Wes Schneider was running the group was that they connected everyone that had related stuff in the adventure to be able to share their drafts and read, and then also adjust what they needed to in case there was a connective line through them. According to its reputation, like based on, me being in the Pro GM scene and like all these other Pro GMs who have read it and done it, I'm holding off on it because I need to wait to be a player with someone. So I have not spoiled myself at all. But I hear great things. It's like got really highly rated reviews. So I feel like in part that collaborative process for adventures and like books and things like that, you really do create the best stuff when people are working together and can collaborate, which is totally divorced from what I heard that freelancing used to be, in which like you live in your box and you submit your draft and then you never hear about it again. And then eventually it comes out and it looks totally different than when you submitted it. That's great to hear. I love to hear that.
And a lot of our developers are like very communicative too. So like we get feedback at a certain point after we've turned things in. So our developers are very interested. I say our developers like I'm not. It's one of those things. The developers at Paizo are very interested in making sure that authors can grow and continue freelancing with Paizo. There is a large like well of silence between turning it in and seeing it again, but there's a little brief glimmer of hope when they send you your feedback email and you're like, okay, I didn't accidentally burn the book down by turning something bad in.
That is pretty cool. And do you get the ability to like read it before it comes out as a contributor? You just gotta get it in the mail or
sometimes depends on the project. When I assign scenarios, I like to make sure that people get them a little bit earlier so that they know what's going on. Mostly because most of the people I know who are writing scenarios want to run them.
Oh yeah.
And they tend to drop at the end of the month, and that's exactly when games get scheduled. So I tend to see how probably a couple days earlier, I'm like, I hope you're excited. And they tend to be excited. Some of the rule books, I think that's starting to happen with them. I don't know. I haven't contributed to a rule book in a little while.
Okay, yeah. For your contributions and like you moving from freelancer to where you eventually got hired, I wanted to talk about what sort of work that you ended up doing and like what you learned early as a freelancer that really helped you out as far as turning in better work.
I benefited in one of two ways. One was when I turned in my bestiary entry, which again was my very first anything I've ever done. Because we had that server where we could all discuss with each other and see what's going on. I had a fantastic, I think is the word that I want to use. I had a fantastic leader they're actually currently the lead editor over at Paizo, and that's Avi. Avi Cool was a fantastic guidance for me. They gave me fantastic advice on how to format things and how to write things up. Liz Liddell gave me fantastic advice on, feedback and telling me, here's what we changed, here's what we didn't change, here's how you can improve things moving forward. And then I went to my first PaizoCon, which was fantastic. We had it online that year, and I was discussing something with John Compton, mostly about how nervous I was to be freelancing and kind of in a freelancing space because I had only had Bestiary 3 and I hadn't done anything else. And he gave me fantastic advice, which was all you need to do to make sure that you continue freelancing is the information that is given to you in your feedback and apply it moving forward. I want to see that you're growing with each assignment that you turn in. And I've lived by that since. And that's the advice also that I give people whenever I assign things and they're like, I'm a little bit nervous about moving forward. Like, just make sure you take every piece of advice that I give you, move forward with it, apply it in your next assignment. As long as you keep growing and you keep learning as an author, we will continue to assign things to you.
Wonderful. And that's, I think, probably imperative for a lot of these smaller companies that need to be reaching out and finding new both writers and perspectives and different contributors, as you can't tap the same 20 people in the industry, especially if you're developing like new stuff, or perhaps your LLC isn't as established, so you can't use the same 20 people that you read in the back of a Paizo book, but you may know somebody that is just getting their start and maybe you can provide them with their first opportunity. Let's talk about Starfinder. What do you like about Starfinder?
The biggest thing about Starfinder that I enjoy is the fact that Starfinder is not purely a science fiction universe. It's more of a space opera kind of thing. So when you approach it, you need to be thinking less of like, oh, Star Trek, and more of like, oh, the greater fiction of Star Wars. It's very dramatic. There are revolutions going on. There are different fun species to interact with and play with. There is an overarching theme of like making change within the galaxy and seeing how things ripple out. There are gods and magic still doing things in this universe. We have not abandoned those just because we have pew pew laser guns. So that's what I like about Starfinder.
What would you, as far as like how it plays and things like that, as far as like what it feels like, how does it feel to you? How would you describe it?
Starfinder's a bit crunchier than Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I have heard, and again, this is the thing that I have to confess every time I come on a new podcast, is I never played Dungeons and Dragons. I never got that chance. I went to a Southern high school in Texas, and we didn't have a Dungeons and Dragons club. So I basically fell into Pathfinder once I got out of school. But outside of that, it's a bit crunchier. If you're coming from like 3.5, you're probably going to understand it a lot faster. But again, the rules are pretty self-evident, pretty self-explanatory. There is a lot of math involved.
Yeah. I recently had a very good experience with the Pathfinder beginner box.
Okay.
And posted about it. I didn't expect Paizo to retweet me, but they did. So then it like got a lot more eyes on it. But I see that I'm looking right now. I should have looked this up before. Does Starfinder have a beginner box?
Starfinder does have a beginner box.
Okay.
It takes you through a very base level adventure. You get to learn about the math and the different rules and everything, and it's very straightforward. What I did is I threw myself headfirst into Starfinder by going, let's play Aeon Throne. And I told all my friends, like, yeah, I'm going to start GMing this. They're like, that's great. How much Starfinder experience you have? And I'm like, none. And they're like, keep Nethys open. And that is exactly what I did.
I see. Is there a Starfinder beginner box for Foundry?
I don't know if it's on Foundry. We don't have as much Starfinder support as we do Pathfinder support. But I do know there are modules where you can port it over.
Yeah. It says Starfinder Beginner Box, a game system for Foundry. I'm gonna have to check this out.
Yeah.
Because I found that's what happened when I was using the Pathfinder Beginner Box. Because I literally, my experience was I downloaded it and my players, like I had like half of them have something come up. So I still had like 3 or 4 players. And I was like, okay, well, we'll just run a one shot or whatever. How would everyone like to try Pathfinder for the first time? And they were like, yeah, sure, I would love to. And then I bought the module online. I
Yeah.
downloaded it and in 10 minutes I was running Pathfinder
Yeah.
because of how the beginner box is set up. I can't say enough good things about how the Foundry VTT beginner box module is set up. It's very intuitive. It's quick. It's
Hmm.
very high quality. I said on Twitter, and I'm not lying, it's the best $35 I've spent as a professional GM in the past year. The amount of value provided in it, astronomical. So knowing that I can rely on Foundry to do the math for me is great.
Oh yeah.
Because I have way less questions and it doesn't grind gameplay to a halt. And it helps me run my business really well in that respect. So after, like, I was on the fence, honestly, because I was like, if I have a bad experience with this beginner box, I'm no kidding. Like, I'm gonna take Paizo and I'm just gonna or Pathfinder, and I'm gonna just like throw it in the throw it in the proverbial trash because I don't have time to learn a majorly complex system. If that process is streamlined, then I can learn it and I'm excited to learn it, and then we can play and have fun and I can discover together with people, which is exactly what's happened with beginner box.
Mhm.
So mission accomplished.
Heck yeah.
Very good job to that team, and including the team who converted to Foundry. I don't know if that was Foundry VTT or your team or somebody within Paizo, but
It's a mix.
it's a
Andrew
mix.
White is our major Foundry partner. He works on our tech team. He's fantastic. Love him to death. He has been banging down our door about Foundry since Foundry started. And
Yeah.
honestly, he's the reason that I'm on Foundry now, because it's like, okay, fine, I will give it a try. And I'm like, oh no, it did all the things for me.
Yeah, it's with especially the way that the system is set up for Pathfinder, it does a lot of the character sheet stuff, which can be the most confusing part of running the game for you. And I can like spend however long flipping through our 600-page core rulebook, or using the search bar at Nethys, in order to find what I need to find. But honestly, having a lot of the traditional stuff and only having to look up obscure rules really helps. A+ experience, recommend it to everyone. If you're not running Pathfinder, you have no excuse now that Foundry VTT module's out, in my opinion. If you're a pro GM, at least. Like, you can at least run these introductory sessions for people. As far as like, so I don't see that there's a Foundry VTT on Starfinder. I'm gonna have to professionally inquire about that. I see that Fantasy Grounds is supported, and they have a Sirenscape thing, but I don't see like a Foundry VTT module. So I will eagerly look forward to that for Starfinder.
Oh yeah, I'll pass it on. I'll poke Andrew with a stick.
Yeah, and I'm also looking forward to so I played a little bit of the Owlcat games for like Kingmaker, and for that reason I am looking forward to the Kingmaker being brought to Foundry, so we'll see when that happens.
Oh gosh.
Maybe in like 2 years or something, or whenever y'all get around to that. That's an immense amount of content, I know, but I really liked it. I just didn't like certain things that dev team did with the content. Some content, as you and I both know, based on me glancing over your Twitter content, should probably be removed or changed and made less a certain way.
Yeah. What I could say is within 1E, certain kind of cultural like understandings of things and certain things were gotten away with and such. However, in second edition, we actually edited this and we were like, we're gonna fix some of that. We're gonna remove some of these offensive stereotypes. We're gonna fix this. We still kept true to the Kingmaker adventure path just because, it's our baby and everybody loves it. It's everybody's favorite thing. So we made sure to get that updated and corrected. Amiri's still there. Amiri's still fantastic and is a hell of a woman.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I had a similar experience, honestly, and I don't think this is unique to Paizo or Wizards or any of these other publishers. Kobold Press, the Empire of the Ghouls campaign, I was the producer that put together their live play show, and we ran that on their channel. But one of the first conversations we had is like, there's some storylines in here that are basically our GM's Jewish, and there was a storyline within the Empire of the Ghouls campaign that was essentially the way it was written, and we understand the intent of it and like the direction that the story was going to go, but not necessarily something that a Jewish GM would want to run. For the same reason that because we had a diverse cast, we were less comfortable with it as well. So we just adjusted it. And, you know, to their credit, KP puts in the front of the book, like, a lot of these storylines some of these storylines, your table may not be comfortable with the themes provided in them, and this is either meant to be explored, or you can rip it out and do what's right for your table and right for your people. I don't think that I just want to caveat like that, I just want to append that too. When I say that I'm going to remove stuff from Kingmaker, you know, I think that's a normal part of GMing, to be quite honest, because
no, absolutely. In fact, my last Starfinder Society scenario was 5-2 Road to Reconciliation, and we were talking about it not long after I moved into my developer position, because the developer for that is Jessica Catalan. She's one of my fantastic coworkers, love her to death. She's also Matisse, so she's native. And she assigned it. It's a very particular storyline about the Starfinder Society returning an artifact to an indigenous coded species and sort of moving forward with that. However, at the very beginning of the book, I detail that, you know, there's this place called the Adamantine Bastille, and it is technically a prison as run by the Starfinder Society. And I noted in there, this character who came from this species to get this sacred artifact back originally, they died in prison. You know, they were put in there on trumped up charges, and then they died. And it was something that they messaged me later, somebody who was running it. They were like, hey, is it disingenuous to your story if I remove this? And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, well, I'm Black and I have a lot of family who's been incarcerated. And I'm like, oh my God, I did not even think about that. Absolutely. Like, you can take any part of my stuff if you're like, this makes me uncomfortable, and you can wiggle that around. Absolutely. However, I've also been very vocal about that, because that scenario kind of got a certain population within the Paizo community up in arms, because they went, well, why are we apologizing for everything? And I'm like, if you are a white American and you're playing this and you feel uncomfortable, I want you to feel uncomfortable, because this story is about returning sacred things to Native. So there is that, like, if this makes you uncomfortable because I wasn't even thinking about like your cross, I wasn't even thinking about your personal experiences as somebody who is, you know, a Black Indigenous person of color, I understand completely. Change that around. Do anything that you need to do. So, no, I get that.
I'm just sitting with what you said. I'm thinking about it. So it's no secret that most of the industry is like white people, right?
Yeah, no secret at all.
Yeah. So how have... based on my like last 2 years of coming out of the closet and like transitioning and everything, so I know that at least from my perspective, people who belong to a marginalized community aren't, you know, necessarily like a spokesperson. Any marginalized people, they're not. But because you're a public facing Indigenous person, and you are okay with stating your opinion, what's that been like?
For 85% of the time, fantastic. Putting my words out there, I've found a supportive community. And I can't even just be like, of other Native people. Like, certainly there is a supportive community of other Native people, but I've also found a very supportive community of just generalized tabletop people who will listen to what I'm saying and go, oh, yeah, I see how that's an issue, and let's fix that. Let's move forward. How do we fix that? How can I avoid doing, you know, in Native stereotypes at my table? You know, how can I make this better for people? 85% of the time, it's fantastic, and people listen, and people ask questions, and people want to grow and learn. The other 15% of the time, unfortunately, it is I have shot up about sorry, I'm doing math real quick in my head. I've shot up about 1,400 followers over the past week and a half. And that is a very interesting situation, because every single day I wake up and I have a new ridiculous DM in my inbox. I also have some fantastic DMs in my inbox. In fact, you were in my inbox, and that was great. I was so happy. But then I also have one, let's see, yesterday's was, I haven't checked my inbox today. Yesterday's was actually about being a white passing Native person. It was, why are you bitching about Native things? I don't know if I could swear on.
No, I swear all the fucking time.
Okay, good. Why are you bitching about Native things when you're just a white girl? And it's like, well, because, Timmy, you need to understand, white passing Natives exist. typically for very unfortunate reasons, sometimes for very fortunate reasons. Sometimes they just get married, and sometimes bad things happened to Native women in the past. That's why I exist, and I talk about Native things because I'm a Native person, Timmy. So that's why I bitch about Native. But I've also had other experiences, like when I was working with Coyote and Crow. One thing was we all kind of bonded over a lot of experiences that we had in Tabletop Universe. I actually had somebody call my call the tribal building in Oklahoma to ask about me. And the unfortunate thing is, and I'm very kind of upfront with this, is Shay is not my birth name. I am a gender trans person. I changed my name. So when they went, oh, is Shay Snow a Caddo person? They obviously got, no, I don't know who that is. But also, like, that building doesn't even deal with who is and is not Caddo. And it was like, well, that was a harassing call. And I only found out about that because that person then messaged me to be like, I called the Caddo Nation and they said they don't know who you are. Well, yeah, you called their random ass government building who, one, it's not like they just have like a sticky noted list right there of every Caddo person who existed. And two, you don't even have my birth name. So why would they even have that on their little sticky note?
I just talked about a similar adjacent issue with Katiosaurus and people reaching out to her and being like, you're not really disabled. You're not. And like, what the fuck is people's problem? Like,
I don't know.
What the fuck?
That was one of the things that Connor Alexander and I actually bonded over, was a lot of people suddenly got to question, like, oh, are you actually Cherokee? You're just a dude. You're just some guy. And he's like, I have my tribal card. Like, I can prove this. And like, he sent us out an email and he was like, yo, I can prove that I'm, a Cherokee person. I'm like, you don't have to prove that to me. You told me, and I look at your face and I go, you're a Native person. You're a cousin. I understand that. I know who you are. Don't worry about it. And it's one of those things where like immediately white people will come in and be like, are you Native? Are you really? I don't think you are. And it's like, bro, you need to take 2 steps back. But then you also have people who are like, well, if you don't like it, go make your own shit. And I'm like, well, here's my card. shayj.card.co. There you go. That's all of the shit that I've made.
If you don't like it, you should be a full-time professional in the industry like you are.
I've also had people who are like, well, I'm going to tell Paizo that you talk about this. And I'm like,
it's on the internet.
Paizo follows me. Okay. Do you want my boss's name? I'll give you her name. You can tell her directly. You can at Eric Mona and anything that I write. I stand by what I write.
That's wild. Like, that's wild. I noticed that a lot of the time, like the people who the Karen-esque type people, the people that really feed off of that negativity, it's really just like, it's very like, they're very reductive about the way they approach things, and they're just always like, I'm gonna tell the teacher on you.
Tell him.
You bad kid, you fake, you grifter. Like, my profile's public. Like,
okay.
That's one of those things that's like, whenever someone comes into like my mentions or whatever, and they're like, hey, there's no way that you actually make this much money. And I'm like, oh no, like I do. And
there you go.
Start playing games like tells people this. Like,
yeah,
I will give you my, like, we don't get like receipts. We just get like payouts. So the best I could do is like send you screenshots. But like,
yeah,
why would I lie about that? You're acting like I make a lot of money by publishing a newsletter. I don't. I don't know. People are
no. I definitely get that. My spouse and I have had to do a lot of mutual aid prior to them, working and everything. And then I'll get people who are like, well, I know you make 6 figures at Paizo. And I'm like, where?
What?
Please.
What?
And like, that's not even like taking a shot at my pay, because I'm like, I recognize, I'm very open about this. I make $45,000 a year, which isn't a lot of money. I do live in the Pacific Northwest. I live literally in Washington. But it's money that I live on. I do not make 6 figures. I did not make 6 figures before I worked for Paizo. I worked for a call center, and I made, I think when I filed taxes at that call center, I made $30,000 a year. No, I do not make 6 figures. I promise. If I'm asking for mutual aid, we need mutual aid. Please, my friend.
Yeah, it's a personal, I guess, 90% of my business is run on spite. And I say that often because like most of the time, like when I decide to do stuff and I get really jazzed up to do stuff, it's because I'm angry about something. Like when certain news dropped in January, I was like, okay, I'm going to run like 10 workshops in 2 weeks and teach everybody how to advertise their non-Wizards games. And I did. And I had like 60 fucking people show up, between all these different workshops.
Yeah.
And it's something I've done in the past, so it wasn't like a big deal for me to do it. It destroyed my schedule and I got way overworked. But
no.
yeah, like on top of that, I was doing my normal job and then my side hustle, which is like publishing. But as far as like, yeah, most of my decisions that I make, unfortunately, are like driven by spite, which is good and bad for me for a number of reasons. But doing is like, if someone gives me the fuel to like prove people wrong, I love that shit.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely understand. Something that I'm very forthcoming with was I did not graduate from college. I dropped out of college and everything. So like my last English teacher was my senior English teacher, and it was senior AP English and everything. And she looked at me after I like finished all of my assignments for the year and we were graduating. It was probably like 2 weeks before graduation. She looked at me and she went, "You want to be a writer, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've always wanted to be an author. It's kind of been a dream." She's like, "It's not going to happen. Like, you need to accept that now. Like, you are never going to be a published author. I've seen your writing and I've seen it all year long and it's never getting any better." And it was so tempting when I got my first copy of Bestiary 3 to address it to that woman because she's still teaching at that same high school and just be like, "Guess what, bitch?
Damn.
There it is."
Damn. That's like such a mean way to say that too. Like she could have been like, "Hey, I know you're still like you're plateauing right now." She could have said that a lot of different ways.
Oh yeah.
She could have been like, "Hey, you're plateauing right now. These are the resources I recommend for you to like, continue to grow and like, but it's a tough world out there, you know what I mean? Like if you really want to get it, like she could have done so many different things than telling you you're not going to make it, bitch." Like
Absolutely. And I remember going home to my mom and being like, "This is what this woman said to me. I can't believe this." Like, I'm sobbing. I'm like crying my eyes out because like this was my first class of the day. So I spent the whole day with that on my mind. And I went home to my mom like that. And I was in theater tech, so I wound up staying late to do a bunch of theater stuff. And I'm still like sobbing my brains out. And my theater teachers were like, "Are you good?" I'm like, "I'm not good." Yeah. And my mom's like, "Oh, she wants to talk like that." I'm like, "Mom, you can't go up to Mom, you can't go up to Mom, don't go up." My mom is very much a fight for everybody person. So she was like, "No, I'm going up to that school. I'm going to talk to that woman." I'm like, "You're not going to talk to that woman. I know what you're going to do. You're 2 feet taller than that woman. I know exactly what you're gonna do."
Yeah, that's some rude ass shit.
Oh yeah, she was terrible.
Damn. Well, maybe that was the spite you needed to be successful. So maybe you should send a thank you card at some point.
Yeah, every time I get really like, oh gosh, what's the word for it? The thing where you don't think you're good at imposter syndrome. Every time I get like really bad imposter syndrome, I'm like, "Do you remember tiny angry woman said to you?" And I'm like, "I do remember what that tiny angry woman said to me." Yeah. And I'm going to remember that. And I'm going to beat her up. Metaphorically with writing.
Yeah. I was just talking to my therapist the other day, actually, yesterday, and I only quantified that with like yesterday because I know that some Southern people, I'm not Southern, but like some Southern people are like, "Yeah, just the other day," and like they mean like 6 fucking months ago or something.
You do that all the
time. But yeah, so yesterday I was talking with my therapist and I was like describing something, and then I came to a realization about like 2 minutes in, which is I guess what therapy is. But I was like, "Oh shit, I have imposter syndrome. Oh shit, that's what this is." Fuck. Okay, that makes sense. Especially in the I receive a lot of messages complimenting me, which is nice. I love that. I basically thrive on positive reinforcement because my parents never expressed their love for me when I was a child. But they just weren't affectionate, right? That's a better way to say that. And but anyway, so it like gets to a certain point though for me though that sometimes I feel like I know that this is the truth. The truth is everybody's like figuring out projects as they're doing them. And there are very few people who actually have done like multiple projects within, A, because it doesn't pay enough. And then B, because it's a sort of a niche hobby and it's very difficult. And generally most things require some sort of investment from somebody. And who has the money to do that when the industry doesn't pay enough? So the cycle continues. Yeah, it's just for me, the imposter syndrome, like now I'm reckoning with it. I'm finally reckoning with it because I have people telling me all these nice things every day, which I really love. I appreciate. The best thing that people tell me is that, or the best type of thing that people tell me is, "Hey, I was reading your advice," or been listening to your podcast, or I've been a supporter or something, and now I'm making a full-time wage or a living wage. Or I remember having someone who was James, and James was in one of my early workshops. And not to say that I did all the work for James, certainly not, but they attended my workshop and they like took my advice and everything like that. And this is a person that is a trans disabled person that lives on disability, and now they have paid off all their debt. They make up to what they can make at the limit of their disability, and still receive disability, I should say, based on pro GMing. And they do it in a way that they like to do it. They do it play by post instead of doing a live game. They're moving into live games. But yeah, he has basically had his life changed by pro GMing, which is really great to see. And that's the type of thing that really fuels my desire to go out and try and help people make a living. It's just kind of weird to me also when I have like these people who have been in the industry for 10 or 15 years, or they're on all these big actual play shows, and they like message me and they're like, hey, I'm figuring this thing out. Thanks for the advice. And I'm just like, I have watched you for 5 years on the television, but I am glad to have helped you.
Yeah.
But so there's that aspect of it, but I wouldn't say that. I'm just really good at playing it cool, I think. Because I'm going to be honest, and like when I went on that panel and I was like there with like B-Dave, it was weird because like me and B-Dave had like interacted before a few times. Yeah. But then we like interacted and they're like normal people, just like everybody else, which is what I expected. But everybody's nervous. Everybody's, having their first interaction with each other. So. Oh, yeah. No, I get that. Anyway. Big long thing about imposter syndrome. I sometimes like when I show people like my writing and stuff, I'm just like, they better fucking like it, or I'm gonna like, or my self-esteem is gonna fucking tank. Like, no, but I understand that. Yeah. So the imposter syndrome is it becomes unwieldy sometimes, but easy to manage with therapy, right? I'm working on it. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about your experience with Coyote and Crow. What was it like to work on that project? If you want to talk about Connor, that's fine too. Yeah, working Coyote Crow was a very unique experience, just because, as we established earlier, the tabletop universe is a very white kind of community. The majority of the people you're going to be playing with and writing with and working with are going to be white people. So it was very interesting to kind of go into a project and it's like, these are all these native people. Here are all these native people who have all the same experiences you do. Sort of. They're in different parts of the country, but they also have these native experiences. I'm sitting there like, oh my god, like I could actually like talk about like native stuff like aunties and things like that. And oh my god, y'all get it. Y'all know. Y'all understand. Like, oh, my cousin was being an idiot. And they're like, yeah, I mean, like that's what cousins do. They are idiots. And it's like, oh my gosh, it was a fantastic experience. Working with them was amazing. We had a Discord server when the initial Kickstarter went live, and we were like, oh, it went live. Fantastic. It's going to be great. And then we're like, oh my God, we funded. And it's like, oh my God, we're getting over our funding limit. It was like, we were literally counting down like how much money we were getting. It was amazing. We were like, that is fantastic. We did not expect this. Working with Connor was great. He was a fantastic mentor. He really gave me a lot of chances to do a lot of like things that I hadn't gotten to do yet. Because like with Paizo, it's very like structured, like you're going to do this and then you're going to do this. And Connor was like, you want to write an adventure? And I was like, hell yes, I want to write an adventure. We're figuring out how adventures look. And I'm like, fantastic. What do I write? And he's like, I don't know, write something. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm going to write this thing that helps me to mourn a family member that died a while ago, but also deals with a lot of like spiritual things. And he's like, do it. Do what you need to do what you want. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna start writing. And it was really great. That became Shadows Over the Moon, which is available on Roll20. Nice. But that allowed me to like talk about my yeye, who was my great grandmother, who passed away when I was much younger. And it allowed me to kind of talk about like a cultural thing that we had, which was shadows causing night terrors, which I had issues with night terrors when I was much younger, and it was really nice to kind of talk about that. It was extremely cathartic. And it was just such a wonderful process. And he brought in, an artist who did fantastic work and put together all those wonderful drawings that are available in it. And it was just sort of like, wow, this was a hell of an experience. And then he's like, hey, you want to write on stories with freelance and be around a bunch of other native people again? And I'm like, yes, I do. So it's a one of a kind experience, let me tell you. Yeah, that seems wild. That's, I inadvertently made over half of my team on the Vineyard queer, but it just kind of turned out like that.
Yeah.
But that sounds wild if like, and then I guess the How to GM romance. I'm trying to think, is anybody just straight? No, everyone's either straight or is not. Wow. Okay, let me double check that. I'm just trying to. I'm pretty sure my whole How to GM romance team is not. Yeah. Wait. No. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think so. We're all queers. It's a win for the queers. We got
It's
it.
a whole smattering of queers.
Yeah. It's a whole smorgasbord of queers. Cool. Okay. Have you been working on Coyote and Crow projects that you're probably not allowed to talk about? Are you currently working on them, or are you moving forward with them, or like what's going on with that?
At the moment, I'm not working on anything with them. I'm kind of taking a small freelance break at the moment because I have been freelancing pretty much straight since 2020.
Yeah.
It is now 2023. It is January of 2023, and I'm like, I'm gonna take a small break. I'm just not gonna write anything for people and not have a deadline. Mostly because I became a developer at Pathfinder Society, and we have a very tight turnaround time. And I'm like, I just can't think about more words at the end of the day. Please give me a break.
That was a weird thing that I learned since moving into the space is like, it doesn't seem like it's a ton of work, but it still is very draining. Like you only have so many hours in order to apply your editing brain or your writing brain or whatever you need. And at the end of the day, you're still giving energy for everything that you do. So you're going to have a limited amount of gas. For you, getting into you started as an editor at Paizo, correct?
I did.
Yeah. Can you walk me through like what a normal day would be for you and like how your workflow?
Yeah. Walking in as an editor, was definitely an interesting experience. As I've detailed before, I came from call centers and then immediately went into the tabletop universe. So usually my day would start typically about 10:30 to 11 a.m. I am a late riser. I would grab pages typically in Word or in Adobe PDF. I would take those onto my Paizo provided PC, which it's not a PC, it's a Mac. We use Macs. Publishing industry tends to use Mac.
Oh, really? Why is that?
I don't know. I think it has something to do. It's been explained to me. Let me see if I can recall this. It has something to do with the fact that Macs have a better color thing. They're more color true or something like that. And since we work so closely with our art team, it's just better that we all have the same kind of hardware so that things can transfer easily.
Oh.
There is a much smarter way to put that, and I don't know how to put that in a much smarter way because I have my own level of dumb.
All right, fair enough.
But we did our work but on the Mac, I'd take it from the Adobe PDF, I'd extract files into that, or I'd grab the Word document of the day that I was working on. They typically ask us to do about 12 pages in a day, which isn't typically too hard. And you just go through making changes, tracking your changes. You'll go into the Adobe program that we use to enter in the changes. We typically have about meetings once or twice a week where we talk about different things that we're taking care of, different things that we're hitting like hard spots on. What's the next product coming down the line, because most people know Paizo is continuously producing. We don't stop making stuff. Like I've said before, Wizards only publishes like 3 times a year. We publish all the time. We are constantly in the go. And then typically at a certain point of the day, you'll go take your lunch, go back to the editing, just all the time. When you're editing, you're checking grammar, you're checking for house style, which we use the Chicago Manual of Style. You're making sure everything is formatted properly so that it makes all those pretty lines and things that you see in our lovely Paizo books. Making sure our art doesn't overlap, making sure things don't overlap on top of the art, all sorts of stuff. Double checking the little where just left my head. Little captions at the bottom of the art pieces that tell you what they are, things like that. We're basically going piece by piece through every single document. And then you turn it in all at the end of the day, you wake up the next morning, you do it all again.
Is it pretty normal for people or editors to be also doing layout?
We actually don't do the layout process. Art lays out all of our books, and then our developers go in and they'll do copy fitting, is what it's called, where they make sure that everything generally looks the same, looks as it should, and then we double check to make sure that the layout looks right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I must have misunderstood what you meant, because normally I just know how it works in the indie scene, really. So I was just kind of curious what the differences might be. Okay, cool. And then you got moved to Pathfinder Society Developer. How's your job different now? And please describe that to me.
Okay. Pathfinder Society Developer, for those who don't know at home, essentially we have an organized play program called the Pathfinder Society, whereupon you play Pathfinder as many times a week as you want, honestly, at this point, because you can find games on Warhorn for every single day if you wanted to. But we release 4-hour scenarios once a month. At the end of the month, we'll release one for Starfinder Society, one for Pathfinder Society, and I am the one who takes care of the majority of the Pathfinder Society. I also have a coworker named Josh Foster, who also does Pathfinder Society scenarios, and he is doing the upcoming quest line, which will be 2 hours. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. No problem. There's a cat on the just for everybody else. If you'd like to introduce your cat to the podcast.
This is Sweet Corn.
Yeah.
He is a Persian mix. No, he's a Siamese mix. Sorry, I always get him mixed up. He is not smart. But that's okay. What he lacks in brain cells, he makes up for in love. And there he goes. He only wants to climb up on me whenever I'm doing a thing. The other one is Beans. Beans is an orange cat. Nobody can decide who's in charge in this household because they're 2 boys.
Cool. So Pathfinder Society Developer in that role. Yeah, let's talk about that.
I mean, I'd love to give you an average day as a Pathfinder Society Developer, but everything kind of shifts around.
Right.
Typically in my day, I'm going to probably assign a scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to work on an outline for an upcoming scenario. Writing that out, telling the authors what I want to see, but giving them enough space where they can get creative with it. I'm going to be developing a scenario that I've already received. So in that case, I'm going in and I'm looking at what the author's written and I'm, making adjustments to it. If this needs to flow differently in this way, or I'm balancing the combats and making sure that, we are not TPKing our level 1 to 4 players. I'm double checking the lore on it, making sure that everything is still keeping up with all of the things that we have published since 1E, which is a lot. I don't know if people know that. It's a lot. I'm giving feedback on things that people are submitting to me, if they're submitting outlines or if they're submitting their midpoints where they're like, I've written about 5,000 words. What do you think? Scenarios are 10,000 words. So that's what I'm taking that in. I'm giving feedback on that. I'm getting into meetings with my manager, Linda Zayas Palmer, or with Josh and Jessica, talking about different, organized play things. Right now, we're in the middle of getting ready for our upcoming new Starfinder Society and Pathfinder Society years. So there's a lot of discussion on what does the art look like? What are the concepts for the upcoming season? What do we want this to look like? How do we want to change this? Do we want to do different things? I'm looking at my calendar to see if I'm forgetting anything. I'm submitting art orders to our art team and telling them what things should look like for NPCs or important items. I am desperately trying to remember to eat food at some point in the day. And yeah, it's typically about it.
Yeah, I totally get that. Sometimes I go downstairs and I'm like, I haven't eaten all day. Weird. Yeah. I had coffee though. So yeah, that's a common thing I run into. Which I'm told is an ADHD thing, but most likely, I'm pretty sure that I have. But yeah, that being said, for Pathfinder Society Developer, do you like the work? What do you like about it?
I like being able to interact with authors and, seeing how things are moving forward. I like to be able to kind of take a vague outline of things that I want to have done and then just giving it over and seeing where they go with it.
I love that. I love doing that.
It's the best.
It's like, hey, here's a little seed of something. Can you just grow this magnificent, beautiful tree? And seeing the results of that. Yeah, I love doing that. It's my favorite. Sorry, project manager type stuff.
No, you're good. It's genuinely one of my favorite things is assigning things out and then getting milestones and turnovers. And I'm like, yes, it's going to be great. Yeah. And then I have to develop it, which is also fantastic, but also is sort of at a certain point where I'm like, okay, I've looked at this scenario every day for the past 5 days and my eyes are going cross-eyed. I would like to pass this over now. Thank you.
And that's nice to have a support team, in case you have some sort of wall that you hit and you can bounce stuff around. I do like seeing stuff first and experiencing it. And I remember when I received first drafts from my project, I was weeping tears of joy because it was my baby.
Yeah.
And it's oh my God, this is so amazing. But yeah, I think there's something that's really cool about collaboratively or editing or fostering some sort of environment and developing in real time something creative with other people and being an enabler for that sort of process is really addictive. So I'm gonna pursue roles like that, I think, moving forward. I like doing that because it makes me feel good. first of all. I
Yeah.
think it makes me feel good because I don't necessarily have to like be the person that made it happen, you know what I mean? And I
Mhm.
get to prop others up who have done like really great work, you know? That's really fun for me. I really like showing off like, hey, my friend did this. Great thing. You should look at it. You should read this. You should buy it.
Yes.
I love doing stuff like that. That's really fun for me. You moving forward with stuff that you are developing for 2023. Let's talk about it. Backwards
Yeah.
Southern Gothic.
Yes, Backward Southern Gothic was a lot of fun. My primary contact was Asa, and Asa was a fantastic guy. He was like, hey, we're writing a lot about this kind of area in the South, over near St. Louis. Specifically, I contributed to City of the Arch. But we also are hyper aware of the fact that this is Cahokia and that this is where a lot of Caddo people were. And we'd really like a Caddo person to write this. Would you be interested? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. And so they were like, all right, cool. Come up with a bunch of NPCs. Tell us, write anything you want about, what's going on in there, about what's happening. How does Cahokia work? How do the people interact with each other? How can players get into this and take plot hooks and work around things? So that was a whole mess of fun. I think I did something like 7,000 words for them. And it's full of just like me cramming in as many indigenous NPCs as I could. I got to write about the traveling settlements. I got to write about the usage of Cahokia as a mound city again, which is always amazing and fantastic. And I also got to see the art process for the creation of a lot of the NPCs. I'm so excited. I believe they've shared some of the art on their Twitter, and they were just fantastic. It's so amazing.
And you are... Do you have a date for that? Do you have like a rough like when that's coming out, or do you not know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I believe they kickstarted it. Let me.
Okay. Do you have a link I can put in the description? Because I'm curious to
grab it. Gothic.
Do you have a mechanical keyboard? Is that therapeutic for you? People who have mechanical keyboards really enjoy them. I don't know.
This is a knockoff Razer keyboard. I technically got it for my partner for their birthday.
Okay.
And then when we moved, they no longer had like a desktop setup. So like now I have it over here at my streaming computer.
Yeah, so it was like a bowling ball situation, huh?
Essentially. Okay.
I got you this keyboard.
I mean, like, I did get them the keyboard. I did do that.
You did it, but
But I benefit. I won't lie.
Do you have like visiting hours for your keyboard?
But I also bought a mechanical keyboard to use on my Paizo Mac as well, because they were very nice. They gave me an Apple keyboard, but the Apple keyboard and my wrists were like fully hunched over, like typing in a weird way, and I'm like, I'm gonna get something maybe a little bit more ergonomic. This is their Itch.io. It should have all their stuff.
Oh, it's an Itch.io project? Okay, cool.
Yes, and that talks about Asa and Alex. Let me grab that. Oh yeah, that first project. There it is. It is currently pre-order. Estimated delivery is March of 2023.
Okay, March 2023. A couple months from now. Not too long. Thanks.
It's really creeping up on us.
This looks really cool.
It's super cool. It's a great setting. The rules are actually pretty straightforward for running it. It's not a standard D20 system, and it's genuinely fantastic. They've got a quick start guide on there too. So
yeah, this looks great.
And like as a Southerner, it's always nice to contribute to other Southerners' projects.
You're not from Washington?
I'm not. I'm from Texas.
Oh, okay. When'd you move up to Washington?
February of last year. We threw everything into our SUV and we drove like 3,000 miles. It was pretty fantastic move. We really got to see a lot of parts of the country that we haven't gotten to see before. Cool. We did have a terrible stay in a Motel 6 where like the doors to the Motel 6 were broken. And there were people running up and down the halls and screaming at 3 a.m. And we ordered Uber Eats from this noodle place, and we were like, oh, okay, it's like it's a noodle shop, and like Conchi, my partner, is from Washington, so their thoughts are like, oh, it's like teriyaki and things like that. I'm like, oh, it's a noodle shop, so it'll be like Italian and pasta and things like that. And it was both, and also macaroni and cheese. It was literally any noodle dish that you can think of, like across the world, they had within their shop. Okay. None of it was very good.
Oh, yeah. Not to shit on Texas food, but I was never impressed when I was there. I think like they, of course, hang their hat on like Texas barbecue. If you're eating anything other than like being around the grill at your friend's house, like what is there to eat that's good? I don't know.
Tex-Mex is always fantastic.
Oh,
We
okay.
have
I don't think
lots-
I've ever had that, actually, now that you mentioned that. Sorry. So-
Shit, I love it. Enchiladas and tacos and things like that.
Oh.
Fucking love it.
I lived in SoCal for a while, so I got kind of like the Mexican
Yeah.
food, like sort of introduction SoCal tacos and things like that. And I'm really lucky actually, because here randomly in Washington State,
Mhm.
I live next to a Mexican restaurant with Mexicans who own it. It's a family-owned restaurant, and so it's like a great. Actual, like, it's difficult to find great Mexican food in
It
Washington
is.
State. Let me just say, it's fucking hard. However, if you're ever in, Port Orchard, Washington, you want to, check out Blue Agave, highly recommend it. If you're driving through and you're looking for some good Mexican, they make some good Mexican.
We have a place not far from us that doesn't actually have a name. It's just called Tortas in all capital letters and with like 2 exclamation points. Yeah, that's legitimate Mexican food. I'll walk in and they'll like, I walked in and ordered in Spanish, and they were like, "Oh, okay, great, cool. You speak Spanish?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm from Texas." Like, of course. And people are like, "What's the restaurant called?" It's called Tortas. That's its name. Its name is Tortas. Tacos and things like that.
Yeah, that's how I knew this place next door was legit. I walked in and they were talking Spanish to each other.
There you
go. I
go.
was like, okay, yeah. I was like, all right, I can trust the food here. Like,
yeah. But also in Texas, you can get really good Vietnamese food. We have a huge Vietnamese population. We also have an enormous Korean population.
Yeah.
So like we've got little Koreatowns around Texas. My favorite one was in Carrollton. I'm very sad because right as we left, they opened up a fantastic Korean chicken place.
Yeah.
And I got to taste their soy sauce chicken. I was like, this is delicious and spicy and soy saucy and everything. And then we moved to Washington and I'm like, no.
I had a similar experience. I found the perfect ramen place outside of Portland, and then I moved right after that. And I was just like, I wish I had gone here the 3 years when I moved here, and I was like living next to Portland. But then I had to divorce myself from that ramen place, and now I have not found a replacement ramen place that has really done it for me. I take that back. When I see my girlfriend in Everett, there is a great ramen place. I just don't remember what it's called. Do you know what orders it? But yeah, I guess that's a good note to wrap it up on.
Yeah.
Eating food with your friends. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast and enlightening some of us about being a freelancer, working in the industry, and stuff about Paizo. So did you have anything else? You're welcome to come on. Did you have anything you want to chat about prior to us signing off? Or to point people to?
In April, Pathfinder Society Scenario 412 is coming out. It's called Negotiations for the Stargun. It was written by fantastic Paizo freelancer Mapia, who is a Dakota person and is a fantastic author, and we're super excited to see it come out.
Wonderful. Can you provide me the link to that person, and then I will put that in the show notes as well?
Yeah, I don't know if they have a... Hang on. Let me do one thing at a time.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to hit the stop record. Thanks so much for listening to the Dollars and Dragons podcast. If you'd like to support me, and more importantly, my editor who does all of the heavy lifting here, then you can subscribe to patreon.com/isfriday. And that is going to go straight to my editor. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.